All right, guys. We are live. Live on YouTube. Gonna wait a few more minutes here to see if anyone shows up. But welcome back to the Relaxing Ghost channel here on YouTube. As always, your host with the most, Ghost. Today we're going to have a special live show reviewing Monday Nitro, the very best of WCW Nitro, and thank you for coming in live, guys. We're going to be doing all three sets here today. So this will be a little bit longer of a video. We do have, lot to cover here. We're going to run through the matches, the discs, the artwork, all of that stuff. It is the anniversary since the debut of Monday Nitro. September the 5th, 1995, 22 years ago this past week. What an accomplishment that WCW made, being one of the first shows on cable television, going live every week, something that the WWE wasn't even doing at that time. And they really made WWE up their game, so to say, at that time. So, yes, I agree, Zane. We'll get into that shortly, but come back in a little while if you want. We'll do a Q&A session if you guys like to chat, but for now, let's get into WCW Nitro Volume 1. This one came out back in, 2011, and the next set would come out in 2012, and Volume 3 came out a couple of years ago in 2015. So, on the cover here, we got Flair, Goldberg, Sting, the Giant, Rey Mysterio. We got Eric Bischoff, DDP, and the NWO. The classic, Nitro logo. And it's like they didn't know what to call these sets. First, we have the very best of Monday Nitro. And Volume 2 would just be called the best of. And Volume 3, they went back to the very best of Monday Nitro. So it's like they weren't sure what to call it at first. But we do have the, that steel layout throughout the set. Drop my notes. And one thing I don't like about Volume 1 is there's no match listings. There's not even room for an insert on here. Very poorly done set, in my opinion. At this time, I guess they'd done away with inserts. Who knows? But I guess we'll take a look at the artwork here. I do have notes of the matches, so we got a shot of Sting and I think DDP there. Shot of DDP and Kidman, Hogan dropping the leg, and Kevin Nash and Sid Vicious. On the inside panel here, we got Goldberg on July 6, 1998, winning the WCW Championship from Hogan. The disc artwork is fairly similar throughout the set, and there is nothing behind each of the discs, just that steel logo there, like I said. Very poorly done set. I would have to say. So, Volume 1, it starts off at the Mall of America, 1995. We get a little history lesson. All 3 sets are hosted by DDP. I like that continuity throughout the sets. It's very rarely these days that we do get continuity throughout DVD sets. It is nice to see it here though, with DDP hosting all 3 sets. So we got the very first match from the very first episode of Nitro. Brian Pillman versus Jushin Thunder Liger. And this is September 4th, 1995. I believe earlier I said September 5th. Sorry about that. And the main event from the first edition of Nitro, Hulk Hogan versus Big Bubba Rogers. Not too shabby. I believe this is where Luger had appeared earlier in the night. He comes out to the ring. Big Bubba Rogers and Hogan are getting into it. Luger comes down, saves the day, and Luger and Hogan are getting into, about to get into it there, and they agree to have a match next week, which, unfortunately, it's not on, I don't think, any of the sets. So, we bypass the rest of 1995 here. We go to January 8, 1996. Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man Randy Savage, taking on Ric Flair, Arn Anderson in a good old tag team match. This is very rare. I believe, Hogan and Savage teaming up in WCW was something we didn't see too much of. DDP here saying Rome wasn't built in one day. And here we have, for the WCW tag titles, February 5th of 96, Sting and Luger taking on the Road Warriors. I don't know what to think about this, but the Road Warriors just weren't the same in this era of wrestling. Something I just don't like. Moving along, 4/29/96, we got a parking lot brawl between the Belfast Bruiser and Steven Regal. May 20th, 96, Ric Flair and Eddie Guerrero having a great match. And here's where things start getting interesting. May 20th, 1996, the beginning of the NWO. Scott Hall making his WCW debut, his Monday Nitro debut. You know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. And he would interrupt a match between the Mauler, who is mauling the guy right there. And a couple of weeks later, 6/10/96, Kevin Nash would make his debut. Look at the adjective, play. We ain't here to play. So, shortly thereafter, WCW would be migrating to Atlanta and doing more shows at the TBS studios in Orlando and things like that. We got a WCW three-way tag team match from June 24th, 1996. Sting and Luger taking on the Steiners, taking on Harlem Heat. Very good match here. July 8th, 96. The NWO is taking over. This would be, of course, the lead up into Bash at the Beach 96. And this would be just after Bash at the Beach. 7/29/96, the Outsiders attacking WCW. Then 8/12/96, Sting and Luger versus Hall and Nash. Awesome. 8/26/96, another NWO taking over Nitro. 9/9/96, Sting attacking Luger. This would be the parking lot incident. 9/16/96, Sting walking out on Nitro. Sting at this time had been fed up with the Nitro stuff, or the NWO stuff. He just walked out, and very uncharacter-like of Sting. 11/18/96, Roddy Piper confronting Eric Bischoff. This would lead up into their Starrcade match with Hogan, which Piper would end up winning. The 12/30/96, Rey Mysterio versus Dean Malenko. Cruiserweight action, something that made WCW stand out from WWE and Raw. Disc 2, so all that was on Disc 1. Very packed, very loaded. This set, Volume 1, running about 8 hours. So, to start off Disc 2 here, we got DDP and Mark Starr, 1/13/97. We got Harvey Schiller here at suspending Eric Bischoff. And we get into Sting attacking the NWO, 3/17/97. Now we're getting into the high-flying cruiserweights with the Cruiserweight Championship match. 6 taking on Rey Mysterio from 4/21/97. 8/4/97, WCW title match. Hulk Hogan taking on Lex Luger. That awesome night in Detroit, Michigan there. Luger finally winning the championship, taking out the NWO. Even though it wouldn't be for long, Luger, he unmounted the champion Hogan for 6 days. Things like this, I believe, really hurt WCW in the end. Pointless title changes. We'll get into that shortly. The disregard for tradition and loyal authority. 9/1/97. The NWO mocking the Four Horsemen. Kevin Nash as Arn Anderson here, mocking the Spot promo there. We got Buff Bagwell as Mr. Perfect, Conan as Mongo, and Six as Ric Flair. That angle, that mocking the Four Horsemen, got those guys a lot of heat. And from September 29th, 97, DDP versus Buff Bagwell. So later on in October, Sting saving DDP from the NWO. Moving along now into 98, Sting versus Savage. We got Jericho's 1,004 holds. And the big match, July 6, 1998. Hulk Hogan versus Goldberg. Goldberg finally winning the championship. At this point, Hogan was champion for, I think, almost 2 years, or quite a while. He lost it in 97 there, almost a year straight. 7/20/98 tag title match. Kevin Nash and Sting versus Hall and the Giant. This is now getting into the Wolfpack era. Rey Mysterio versus Chris Jericho. Juventud Guerrera versus Billy Kidman. And tradition returning. Ric Flair returns to the Four Horsemen almost 19 years ago today. 9/14/98. Such an emotional moment there in Greensville. Awesome. Disc 2 continued here. We got a U.S. title match, Bret Hart and DDP. Ric Flair versus Eric Bischoff at 12/28/98. And Disc 3, Cracks in the Armor. By this point, WCW had been losing on the ratings war for several months. They would get a couple more wins here and there, but by this point, it was all downhill. And to start off disc 3, talking about downhill, the finger poke of doom from January 4th, 99. Kevin Nash versus Hulk Hogan for the WCW title. Goldberg spearing Bret Hart. We got a WCW title match, Sting and DDP. Solidifying a legacy, Eddie Guerrero versus Hoovy. And an awesome moment, August 9th, 1999. Hulk Hogan, Goldberg, and Sting versus Kevin Nash, Rick Steiner, and Sid. This would be the return of the red and yellow. Hogan was a WCW champion at the time. He was, part of the NWO Elite, whatever they were calling it by this point. And out of the blue, we hear the Real American theme that Hogan was using in WCW. And out comes Hogan, yellow trunks, red boots. The old Hogan that we all loved is back in WCW. No more spray paint on the World Championship. So, an epic moment there. Moving along in disc 3. Billy Kidman and DDP. Bret Hart versus Goldberg. Kevin Nash and Sid. The last ditch effort. The Bischoff-Russo era beginning. Not a fan of that. They definitely tried to do something different, but stripping everyone of their championship and crowning new champions. I think that was a big mistake on their part. And this was a 4/10/2000. We got a steel cage match, DDP versus Jeff Jarrett. A tag team ladder match, 3 count versus the Jung Dragons. Here's a good one. Booker T versus Lance Storm for the WCW Championship. Lance Storm at the time was a triple champion. He was the U.S. Cruiserweight and the Hardcore Champion. He would rename them all Canadian Championships. The Canadian Cruiserweight, the Saskatchewan Hardcore International title. Shit. We got the Triple Cage War Games match for the WCW title. I'm not sure who won that, but I think it is either... Might be Kevin Nash. That was when 9/4/2000, the 6th year anniversary of... Kevin Nash ended up retaining the title there. Him and Russo were in cahoots during the match. Russo, who just looked like a goof during the match, coming out in hockey gear and a hockey helmet. Say what you will about Russo. He did good, he did bad here and there, but being an on-screen character is something I never liked of his. And the final moments on the disc 3 are from the simulcast episode 3/26/2001. Vince McMahon buying WCW and Ric Flair taking on Sting. Not Ric Flair's best match, but it definitely does come full circle in the whole WCW NWA thing with Rick and Sting. They had a great rivalry over the past 13 years at this point, and it was a good moment for them to send Nitro, shut the door on Nitro. Very good. So what are you guys' thoughts on Volume 1 here? Let's try to get a couple comments here going. So, hello everyone, if anyone's still paying attention. No, Vince Russo didn't win that cage match. That's the wrong cage match you're thinking about. So what I have here is a wrestling almanac, and it has all the title histories. Oh, maybe it was Russo. So maybe I wrote the dates down wrong or what, but maybe Russo did win that match. I always thought Nash won it there. Yeah, that was the Triple Cage War Games match from 9/4/2000. Not the 9/25/2000. 3 weeks later. So let's move along to disc 2, or volume 2. So volume 2 came out the year later, 2012. Only a running time of 7 hours. So I do think they did a much better job of this. They definitely added a match listing. They definitely put some time and effort into this. So on the cover here, we got DDP, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Goldberg, Sting, Savage, and Kevin Nash. And the top 3 guys are embossed. It does pop out a bit here with Hogan, Sting, and Goldberg. On the back, we got Hogan and Sting, or Hogan and Savage. We got Nash and Goldberg. And we got some featured matches. Oh, pretty cool. On the inside, we got Booker T as the tag team champion. We got Piper and Bret Hart. On the other inside panel, from the House of Pain match between Vampiro and Sting, which was a like a no DQ cage match, something or other. Not a fan of that. So we got some fairly decent artwork. Disc 1, Macho Man. Disc 2, DDP. And Disc 3, we got the Giant. Just snapshots. Macho Man reinventing himself in 1999. So, let's run down the matches. Hello! So, Volume 2 starts out with a U.S. Championship match, Ric Flair and Sting, from the first episode of Nitro, September 4th, 1995. And Luger would make his debut during this match, appearing in the Mall of America. We got Medusa trashing the Women's Championship. Hulk Hogan versus Arn Anderson. The Steiners versus the Road Warriors. Jushin Thunder Liger versus Dean Malenko. Rey Mysterio versus Hoovy. We got Eric Bischoff's biggest regret. DDP versus Jeff Jarrett for the U.S. title. Kevin Nash patches up potholes. I believe that this was just like a little promo with them in Detroit or wherever it was. Hulk Hogan makes Sting worship him. This, I believe, was with the fake Sting. Ric Flair versus Scott Hall on Disc 1. Disc 2. We got Hogan and Rodman calling out Luger and the Giant. This would be days before their pay-per-view match there at shoot, what was the name of those pay-per-views? It wasn't Spring Stampede. Got Rey Mysterio versus Kevin Nash, La Parka versus Macho Man, Goldberg versus Hugh Morris, Goldberg's debut on Nitro, Booker T versus Jeff Jarrett, Steiners versus Public Enemy, NWO singing "Oh Canada." I love that moment. Booker T versus the Macho Man. We got DDP remembering the Macho Man segment there in studio. We got Rey Mysterio, Juventud Guerrera, and Hector Garza versus Psicosis, Silver King and La Parka. DDP versus Chris Jericho. We got Hogan, Hall, and Nash versus Sting, Savage, and the Giant. Sting versus DDP. This would be the year before DDP became the champion, but they put on a hell of a match here. We got Raven versus Goldberg for the U.S. title. What up, buddy? Oh yeah, Mark Boy is a very good friend. Awesome. And final segment on disc 2, the birth of the Wolfpack. I kind of wish there was more, Wolfpack stuff on here just for the nostalgic factor that I would want, but Kevin Nash and Luger, this is disc 3 now. Kevin Nash and Luger versus Hogan and the Giant from June 1st, 1998. Chris Jericho meeting the real Goldberg. So if you guys remember, this thing went on for a couple months, I believe, with Jericho calling out Goldberg. He went like 3-0 against Goldberg without even fighting him. He would win by countout. A fake Goldberg came out at Fall Brawl in 98. And he just, kind of embarrassed Goldberg. Goldberg would come out. When Jericho turned around, there was Goldberg, and he took a vicious spear in the aisleway. Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero. No matter how many matches of those two I watch, I'm always impressed. Always wanting more. And the thing is, they didn't really even have that many matches. And up next, we got a ladder match for the Taser. Bam Bam versus Scott Hall, January of 99. Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper. It's like this thing came full circle again with these two. I believe Piper won the title here. And it was like their WrestleMania match all over again. Let's see if I can find it quickly, but they didn't have that good of a match, but it was a great moment. Yeah, Piper would end up winning the title there. Just a good moment, a feel-good moment. You don't get many of those. The Jersey Boys, the Jersey Triad. Perry Saturn and Canyon versus DDP and Bam Bam Bigelow. I believe this was in either the Georgia Dome or the Astrodome. Yeah, it was the Astrodome in Houston, Texas, which I was actually amazed that WCW, they did take more risk in going into these bigger stadiums at time to time. I believe they also did New Orleans. They did the Georgia Dome a few times, the Astrodome a couple of years before WWE did WrestleMania there, but they only probably had maybe 20 or 30,000, but still holding a Nitro there is crazy. And this was like Perry Saturn in a handicap match. He would not stop fighting these two guys in DDP and Bam Bam. Canyon appeared later on in the match, and he just ate a pin. I didn't like that finish at all. Macho Man vs. Hollywood Hogan from July 12th, 99. The thing I didn't like about Macho Man's WCW run, it's like he was always playing backup to Hogan. Macho Man would have this awesome, great moment, winning the championship, and he would drop it the next day to Hogan. I don't know if that's politics, creative control clauses, or what, but Hogan and Savage, their histories are connected. We got Nash and Hall versus Goldberg and Brett. Sting versus Vampiro in the House of Pain match. Shane Helms and Shannon Moore and Booker T versus Scott Steiner, the final Nitro for the U.S. and World Heavyweight Championships. Great match there. Short match, but a great match. So that'll wrap up Volume 2. Disc 1 featured a lot of NWO stuff, and, with Volume 2 here, it kind of got away from that pattern they had in Volume 1. And let's get into Disc 3. What are you guys' thoughts so far on Disc 1 and 2, or Volume 1 and 2? So we've been live for almost 35 minutes now, guys. Take some time and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This is our little celebration of Monday Nitro, reviewing all 3 disc sets. I didn't really watch Nitro as much as I really wanted to. Back in the day, I would catch it here and there, but in Canada, I didn't have TBS at the time, so later on, we would get TBS and the Superstation, so I would watch it here and there, but not as much as I wish I would have now. I did catch a few good moments, which we'll get into in a second, and a few great moments, like the unmasking of Rey Mysterio, things like that. I remember a match with Kevin Nash and the Giant, and Scott Hall was being punished at the time. He was on Ring Crew. They would show him, earlier in the day, he was putting the ring together, and he had this blue wrench or something like that. And this is something WWE really needs to do today, is seeding. I talked about this before, is seeding things throughout the show. You see something earlier in the night, which comes up later on. So later on, Nash and the Giant are fighting. Out comes Scott Hall. That blue wrench comes back into play. Wham! Over the head of the Big Show, and crazy moment. So Disc 3, it's like they took another step back. Pretty much the same layout as Disc 2, which I like quite a bit, this set. So on the cover, we got Booker T, Bret Hart, Chris Jericho, Sting, and Flair. We got an updated sidebar or spine. DDP there. On the back, got some screenshots of that epic Four Corners ladder match. Hogan, Sting, the Giant and Scott Hall, and a Macho Man elbow drop. Bang! Yo! So on the inside cover, we got Sting versus Bret. Walk of chemistry. What up, Evil Nerd? Congratulations on your victory on winning the WWE DVD from Wrestling Rampage. We got a shot of the Macho Man in a mink coat, a pink mink coat. Yeah, back to Sting and Bret. I don't know if their chemistry was just off or what it was, but they had an all right match. I don't think it lived up to the standards that people thought it would be. You know, you got the best ever with Bret Hart and the franchise player Sting. I just didn't think their match was up to par. So on the inside here, we got Hogan and Page, DDP. And disc art, we got, pretty much the same as the cover. We got Bret Hart, Booker T, and Chris Jericho. I'm actually watching disc 2, but Bret Hart's on there. It's the same picture as the cover. So Booker T on disc 1, Bret's supposed to be on disc 2, and Jericho there. No, man, actually, I don't even have a PlayStation or an Xbox. I haven't played video games in years. Something I would like to get into, but maybe one day I'll buy one. But for now, I don't even have a game. I have a game, but I don't have a system. The last game I think I've played is SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. I got the PS3 version of this, but never played it. These games are just so expensive these days. I went to Walmart, PS4 I think is like $350. Xbox is probably $400. That's a lot of money to dish out just for a game, and then the games themselves are maybe, $50, $60, up to $70, $80. Lot of money. Like I said, one day maybe. So let's get into the matches real quick. I don't want this video to go over an hour. Try to run through Volume 3 real quick and maybe wrap up with a Q&A session. So we got Nitro from 1995. If Luger loses, he must leave WCW. Lex Luger, Macho Man Randy Savage. No, actually, I don't have any mobile games at all besides like Candy Crush or cards. I'm not really a fan of wrestling games on mobile. I don't know why, but we got Johnny B. Bad, also known as Mark Mero, taking on Eddie Guerrero for the TV title. Sting versus DDP. Ric Flair versus the Macho Man for the WCW Championship. Sister Sherry versus Medusa. This would be shortly after the title in the trash. Sting versus Rick Steiner. The New World Order kicking out the Giant. The Giant would be sticking up for Roddy Piper, and, they didn't like that too much. DDP chasing the Macho Man. Luger versus Nash. The Giant and DDP versus Harlem Heat. That's a weird tag team. The Giant had so many partners by this point. Cruiserweight title match. Chris Jericho versus Hoovy. Scott Steiner versus the Macho Man. Moving on to disc 2. WCW tag title match. The Outsiders versus DDP and Luger. We got DDP versus Stevie Richards in a, pretty much a squash match. NWO taking over Nitro. I'm pretty sure that was in the middle of a tag team match there. Or never mind. Thinking of Outsiders and Page and Luger. Eddie Guerrero and Chris Jericho versus Chavo and Dean Malenko. NWO attempting to recruit Rick Steiner. The Giant tossing Scott Hall in a pool. Hoovy versus Billy Kidman. Hulk Hogan versus Macho Man Randy Savage once again for the WCW World Championship. Like I said earlier, I'm not a fan of these quick title changes here with the Macho Man. I was very upset when I found out he only held the title like for a day, 4 days, or something stupid. Let's look back in our almanac for how many days the Macho Man was apparently champion. So his first title run, he would be stripped of the title because of the Hogan Giant debacle. His second title run lasted a couple of weeks. His third title run lasted a day. And his fourth title run lasted a day. So the Macho Man, very successful, but didn't seem to hang on to the title too long. We got Luger joining the Wolfpack, Hogan calling out Malone and DDP, Kidman versus Scott Hall, DDP versus Canyon, Bret Hart challenging DDP, Goldberg versus Bam Bam Bigelow versus Kevin Nash. Disc 3, Bret Hart versus Booker T, Goldberg versus Ric Flair, Hogan versus DDP, Sting versus the Macho Man, Hack, also known as the Sandman, taking on Rick Steiner, Hogan and Sting versus Nash and Sid, Medusa versus Mona in a New York evening gown match. Here it is, Sting versus Bret Hart. A Texas Tornado ladder match for the WCW US Championship with special guest referee Kevin Nash. Scott Hall, Sid Vicious, Bret Hart, and Goldberg. WCW was such a clusterfuck by this point. It's really hard to, like any of this stuff. It was just a mess. Jeff Jarrett versus Bret Hart for the WCW title. Sting and Vampiro versus Luger and Flair. Booker T versus Mike Awesome. 3 count Young Dragons versus Jindrak and O'Hare. And Booker T and DDP versus Scott and Rick Steiner. One of my favorite moments on Volume 3 are on Disc 2 here, tossed around like Legos. And what this is the Big Show decimating the Nitro set. Remember those big WCW letters that were like made of similar to the same material as the WWE ring steps? They were at the staging area. The Big Show is like picking up these pieces of the W and the big C and tossing it around like it's a Lego. I remember watching that moment. It must have been live because I would search for years and years on YouTube, on Daily Motion, on something. I could never find it on anywhere. And then I finally, when I bought this and seen it, I was so happy. I was like, wow. And that's from, December of 98. Great moment. So, let's get into a quick Q&A, guys. Overall, I would give all 3 volumes a big thumbs up. There is some ups and downs throughout the way. It is heavily based with the NWO here and there, but it's very cool to go back and watch all this stuff. So if anyone's still watching, let's get into the Q&A. Yes, I do. I actually reviewed it already on the channel here, so if you'd like to see me review it once again, I'll do that. The Eddie Guerrero DVD is one of my favorites. I really love that set. And, you know, what can we say about Eddie? And, you know, I look at his career, his legacy of, you know, what he meant to the business. Becoming WWE champion in 2004. I love that run he had. I love the stuff with the LWO, his run in WWE in 2005, the Latino Heat with China. You know, even as a heel, you had to love Eddie Guerrero. You know, Eddie will go down as one of the greatest of all time. You know, and it wasn't his size. It wasn't, you know, there wasn't a flaw in his arsenal. Because Eddie definitely put on some great matches. You know, I remember Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit putting on clinics. Eddie Guerrero and Chris Jericho. Pretty much everyone that Eddie stepped in the ring with was magic. He and Ric Flair had a match, I think, at Hog Wild for the U.S. title. Great match. Him and Rey Mysterio, I talked about this earlier in the video. Halloween Havoc 97, another great match. You know, he's become Grand Slam champion in wrestling and will forever be remembered as, you know, an all-time great. So any more questions, guys? Or should we wrap this up? You know, thank you all for watching today. Send me a tweet at HWMGhost on Twitter. If you'd like to see more videos like this, give them a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. This has been the very best of WCW Monday Nitro volumes 1, 2, and 3 all in one video. It's been 22 years in the making here with the rise and fall of WCW Monday Nitro. I really wish they would have did a nice set for the 20-year anniversary, kind of like the one they did for Raw, but you know, we'll get there one day. You know, I'm really glad that Ric Flair is, you know, I don't think he's out of the hospital quite yet, but he is doing much better, and that's always good to see. So comment down below once the video is reposted for, you know, any DVD reviews, anything else you would like to see, guys. We'll talk to you later. Peace!